we are live. Okay, welcome to the first stream of Hashing It Out in 2023. I'm Jordan Mack. I'm a senior software engineer here at the Nervos Foundation. Joining me today is our first guest, Matt Quinn, who is the head of ecosystem development. You know him. He's been on many episodes of Hashing It Out in the past. How you doing today, Matt?
I'm great. Glad to be doing this again, wrapping up another year.
Wrapping up another year. And for first time on the show today is Travis Richardson. He's a developer relations engineer here at the Nervos Foundation. How you doing, Travis?
Good to be here. Excited. This is my first time, so excited to go forward with this recap today.
All right, so let's see. Yeah, today we are talking about 2022. Looking back at it, a lot of things happened. We want to just quickly go through a bunch of those points today. But before we do, this is a live show, so I have to mention the three things I always mention. Number one, we don't talk about the price on this show. Number two, we don't talk about things that are not supposed to be announced, like new exchanges, because we can't do that legally. And number three, the opinions expressed on the show are of the individuals, not of the Nervos Foundation itself. So without any more delays, let's go ahead and get into it. Travis, you want to take us into the first topic?
Absolutely. So yeah, the first thing here is that if you guys have been regular viewers of Hashing It Out, you know that we've been sort of through a revamp after a brief hiatus. And I think, Jordan, you could speak more to that.
Yeah. So in early 2022, it was actually, we took a break from Hashing It Out for a couple weeks. It was only supposed to be, I think, 2 weeks, but then we ended up redoing the show format, and we came back with the format that we're doing today, which is a little bit less frequent. Before it was weekly, and now we're doing it monthly. And part of the reason for that is it was just a huge amount of time that we had to commit to it. So anyway, I think this has been working out much better for us. We can actually put a little bit more time and effort into actually putting together each episode and give it higher quality, even though we're a little less frequent. Okay, so what do we have up next?
Yeah, so one of the things that we are excited to highlight is the record growth of our usage, record levels of growth and usage. Even despite the bear market that's going on, we still see active engagement. We're still building. One of those is around our unique addresses that have risen to 1.5 million. That's a pretty impressive number.
Right. So this is always important to highlight, and this doesn't necessarily translate directly into users, because a user could have more than one address, but it does translate into a metric that we can track, which is the number of addresses that is actually being used on chain actively. And so we are up to 1.5 million. This number continues to grow, and it's a very positive one.
Yeah, and then another one here is over 68.2% of our secondary issuance, amounting to more than 2.8 billion, has been burnt. So, Matt, do you want to speak to what secondary issuance is and why that's important?
Yeah, I think one of the most common questions you get from people coming into Telegram is when burn. And so the secondary issuance is a component of the CKB issuance schedule. So it's broken up into three parts. One goes to miners for state rent to compensate them for storing the chain. Then another one goes to Nervos DAO depositors. And then this third portion that's being burnt so far, it will be a treasury in time for decentralized governance of, the progression of the chain. But for now, yeah, it's just being burnt. So that's 3 billion CKB that will never be put into circulation.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's awesome. And then also the third point here is that the Nervos DAO has more than 8 billion CKB locked up, the total of 45.4 thousand depositor addresses. Jordan, why is that important?
That's important because it shows that we have a lot of active users out there who actually have CKB and they're locking it up. Again, this is one of those where it takes it out of the active supply pool. So these are people who are just planning on holding for the long term, and 8 billion CKB is a pretty big chunk of it.
Yeah, awesome. Another one on the list here is our live cell count, which is reached an all-time high of 1.25 million. Matt, you want to tackle why our live cell count's important there?
Yeah, so live cell shows the number of people using the chain for things. So for .bit, for example, if you create a .bit name, then you will have a cell for that name. So the more people using the chain for things, the higher that cell count is going to be.
Yeah, thank you for that. And that's a good lead in because .bit is one of our standout projects, and it has hit, .bit has hit 262,000 registered accounts, and that is up from 47,000 a year ago, really highlighting what can be done on our chain. Jordan, do you want to talk more
Yeah.
about .bit's
Yeah,
progress?
yeah, absolutely. So the 262 number is actually from December, and since then it's actually risen to, I believe, 287,000. And that's a huge increase over 47,000 from the previous year. I mean, this is a huge amount of growth from one of our biggest, I would say, single biggest project right now. But that kind of a move is astronomical. And they are on a solid trajectory. And this is a project that was made possible by the technology that underlines Nervos. They came to us because they couldn't do this anywhere else.
Yeah, thank you for that. So those are some pretty impressive statistics. The next thing that's going to happen, which is really exciting, is our first halving, which is going to happen later in 2023. And for those of you watching, they understand how Bitcoin does its halving every 4 years. We are on a sort of similar schedule, and that is really good for cutting down the inflation and all of that. So, Matt, do you want to talk about the importance of our halving coming up and why that's exciting?
Yeah, so there's a whole body of pseudoscience in the Bitcoin community about the halving and the economic impacts on the price. And I think with a proof of work chain, the less issuance that's coming onto the market, the better for holders. So, that will be cut in half, by the end of this year. CKB followed Bitcoin's, I guess, issuance schedule in some ways of a lot of the issuance, or I guess exactly half of that issuance comes onto the market in the first 4 years, and then half of what's left after 4 years, and so on. So I think for people who complain that miners are always dumping their coins, this would change that situation. I think long-term effect on price is subject to a lot of different factors, but yeah, I think as evidence from Bitcoin, this does have an effect.
Right. So
Yeah.
I think it's, in case anybody wants to look at the actual charts, the explorer.nervos.org. So if you click on the charts tab, there's the inflation rate that you can find on that page. And that'll show you that they're on the date of the halving, which is the end of this year, there's a very sharp decrease in the inflation rate. And so this is something that happens continuously for a very long time, where it keeps cutting in half and a half and a half. But since this is the first one, this is the most significant decrease that we're going to see. And this is, again, coming up at the later half of this year. If you go to another website, nervoshalving.com, that'll show you the exact calculated date on when that's going to happen. And that's a site I'm putting together. It's actually a very basic one. But we want to put in more details down the line, and actually, I should mention Lee out there actually volunteered to help put together some of the text. So thank you, Lee. He's going to be helping me put some of that together. Probably, I'm going to say in the next 2 months, we should have a lot more information on that site.
Thank you. Yeah, and another thing that we had happen, which is really impressive, was our major protocol upgrade, aka the Marina hard fork. That was our first hard fork on layer 1 since our launch on 2019. This was a non-contentious fork. There are contentious forks like we saw with Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, where not everybody agrees on how that fork should get done. And in our case, there was full agreement, which is a great thing to see. Nobody likes disagreements, and those that can't agree tend to have issues later on. In any case, that hard fork executed without a hitch on May 10th, 2022, and there are a lot more to this. One of those ones being the CKB VM version 1. Matt, can you talk about that component?
Yeah, so this new version, well, I guess the first thing to introduce here is that we actually have versioning in the CKB VM now, where what went live at launch is one version of the VM, and now after this Marana upgrade, there's a second version of the VM. Both are still available to developers, so everything is still completely backward compatible. But this new version introduces some new I guess, computing functionality that makes things like cryptographic algorithms more efficient. And yeah, keeping with that concept of decentralization, we want people to be able to execute everything on their laptops at home. And yeah, by making the virtual machine more efficient, that allows us to maintain decentralization.
Yeah, let's see. I guess I can add a couple things into that too. Just from the developer standpoint, there were a number of restrictions that were in place that were loosened up over time in this fork, and these were the direct result of feedback from the community of developers, which has been very positively received so far. I can tell you that some of the things that they had done, they were taking, they were, of course, they were prioritizing security first, which is what you want to do. But over time, sometimes you can loosen up some of these things as you realize that they are truly hindrances to developers and that it is not necessarily much of a security risk to loosen these things. So a bunch of those types of changes were made as well.
Yeah, I guess the last thing to add here is I see the block header extension was added. So that will play a role in the light clients. So we couldn't have light clients prior to this hard fork because we didn't have a field in the chain to store that information. But now after this hard fork, that's enabled.
Great. And most of the dApps and exchanges did get updated. Some missed the deadline, but most of them were updated. So pretty much, I'd say this one went off without a hitch, which was really great to see because not all chains achieved that. So big achievement there. Next point is good lead in again, Matt. There is that we have our CKB Lite client that got introduced. I believe it's now. Well, I'll let you talk more about that, Jordan, on the Lite client.
Yeah, so with the Lite client, yeah, that's something we've been anticipating for quite some time, of course. This allows users to trustlessly interact with CKB directly without an intermediary. And so this is very important because if you are going through an intermediary, that means that you are trusting them, and this is largely a centralized system. And so Nervos has always been about decentralization first. So this is a big step towards that, and this allows Lite clients onto the chain, which are great for things like mobile and web and casual desktop users who don't necessarily want to run a heavyweight node that has a giant blockchain attached to it. And so, the blockchain keeps getting longer and longer. It gets a little bit heavier, and there's users out there, especially those in other countries that don't have necessarily a great internet connection. It can be troublesome for them to actually run it now that it's starting to get a little bit bigger. So anyway, this is an option for all of them and all the casual users out there as well, which is going to allow our blockchain to have really I would say a clear-cut advantage over a lot of the other chains out there that really can't do this as well, where we're going to have smart contracts where the developer, the user is interacting directly with the chain. Like I said, no intermediary, no Infura out in the middle of it or anything like that. Just them directly interacting with the blockchain in a way that works really great and has a really great user experience. So that was actually just went to the testnet, and it's expected in 2023.
I just want to add something on there. I've been surprised, kind of, in the wake of FTX and all of the nonsense that's gone on over the course of 2022. People have really started to ask for this kind of assurance. Like even the idea of using CKB PW, which is a web wallet, but the infrastructure is operated by a third party. I guess we've seen this with Collect, where Collect has gone down. Users really feel strongly that they don't want anyone to be able to mess with these things. And I've been going back and forth with somebody earlier today trying to get Neuron running in a challenging environment, but they don't want to compromise. They don't want to use something else. And I think this Lite client is going to provide that. And I think like everything with Nervos, it takes a long time, but then once it's there, you can almost take it for granted. And looking forward to that being the case for a lot of these users.
Yeah, thank you. Another point that we have here is Forest Bridge. We have integrated the Binance Smart Chain in 2022. That's exciting, and I believe there's some updates that are going to happen as well with Forest Bridge. When do you guys want to tackle that one?
I can
Let's
go
see.
for it.
Yeah, I think you're a little bit
Uh,
better on that one, Matt. Go for it.
Yeah, so I see here that ForceBridge did integrate Binance Smart Chain last year. So right now there's the ForceBridge to Ethereum and to Binance Smart Chain. The core developers are also working on this what's been dubbed ForceBridge 2. So it's R&D effort right now, and the design of the bridge is very different from ForceBridge version 1. So ForceBridge version 1 was a multi-sig bridge where basically you had 3 to 5 trusted parties that held custody of those funds and moved them across those bridges. As we've seen with bridges, these things can be, I guess, compromised. Axie Infinity is the best example of a multi-sig bridge being compromised by compromising the keys. ForceBridge version 2 is going to be a different kind of bridge. I guess Cosmos IBC is the best example of this format of bridge. It's called header relay, where you're actually relaying the some data from the block between the different blockchains, and that is your proof that transactions have occurred. And yeah, there's no trusted third party in the middle there. You're just trusting the consensus of each chain, and so it is a completely decentralized bridge. We don't have any sort of dates on when we can expect anything there, but I think it's important to share that in the wake of all these bridge hacks, there is still work ongoing to build more secure bridges.
Yeah, I think that I just want to throw in there that yeah, definitely in 2022 we saw some monumental bridge hacks, and that really gave the entire industry a little bit of pause there and to rethink what exactly is our approach here, because we can't allow this to keep happening. There has to be an end to some of these hacks, and so this approach here is a result of that, of rethinking some of this and realizing that the way we were going after it might not have been the absolute best way. This header relay bridge has very clear-cut security advantages to it. So this is why we have kind of slowed down on the integrations with ForceBridge version 1. It's because this is necessary. We view this as absolutely a necessary thing for the future. We don't want to be one of those ecosystems with a giant bridge hack. We need this to be secure, and they're going to take the steps to do that.
Yeah, thank you, Jordan. Another project here, Axon, our side chain, has been under development. We didn't really hear a lot from it in early part of 2022, but just as I've been watching things, it seems like Axon is going to be coming into its own as well here in 2023, which is pretty exciting because we've got Godwoken, which we'll talk about here in a second, but Axon also is going to have a lot to deliver potentially here. Jordan, do you want to talk more about Axon?
Yeah, I can talk quickly about that. So Axon is, of course, our sidechain framework that is going to have a bunch of bridge capability built out of the box. So this is great for a lot of projects who wanted to put together their own blockchain project for a variety of reasons. And this is similar to, of course, something like Axie Infinity, where they actually had such high chain activity that they felt they needed their own blockchain. They had to put something together. We want to be able to enable those types of things on Nervos very easily and very quickly, and Axon is our answer to that. So it became mainnet ready, is what they were calling it, in late 2022. And what I mean by that is, so this is a release. They have done all of their due diligence and everything and reviewed the code very thoroughly. They believe that it is ready for mainnet projects, but they're doing a controlled rollout on this. As I think they're working with several very early projects who are now working with it, just starting their integrations, and we'll hopefully see something this year. And this is not, Axon is not a project that is going to be necessarily finished on any specific date. It's going to continue to add features for quite some time, and they're going to be working with the projects themselves to help determine what's most important to each of these projects and these developers, so they can make the best decisions possible. So anyway, again, that was the mainnet ready in 2022, and hopefully here in the next couple months we'll start to see some of these projects actually roll things out with Axon.
I just want to add there on the words mainnet ready that there won't be an Axon mainnet. This is a framework that's intended for developers to launch their own chains. And when Jordan mentions that there's going to continue to be development on Axon, we were talking about things like if a developer wants to be able to pay gas fees on behalf of their users, or if a developer wants users to be able to use their mobile phones to hold the keys and not have to use mnemonic words. they can integrate that functionality into the blockchain, from the start. And the Axon team is focused on making those things, very, very developer friendly for use cases like Axie Infinity.
Okay. And then we have our L2 scaling solution, Godwoken. Not to be confused with Axon, Godwoken is totally different in a lot of ways. It's 100% EVM compatible. It has a few other features and a lot of excitement, a lot of interest. I know with Build Club building and just gaining a lot of attention from a lot of different developers. Matt, can you talk about the energy that's behind Godwoken and where we see it going here in 2023 as well?
Sure. Yeah. So I think the biggest news from Godwoken this year was, I guess, from a developer front, 100% EVM compatibility. I think anyone who tried to use Godwoken in its early days found that there were a lot of corners of things that needed to be accounted for. But looking at it now, it's very straightforward. It's like developing on any other Ethereum-based chain. And from a high-level perspective, Godwoken spun out into its own organization and announced a focus on gaming and making the experience for blockchain developers, focused on gaming better. Things like addressing fees or making it easier for their users. And I also see that they became carbon neutral this year.
Well, last year technically. You
Oh
said
yes,
this
last year,
Yes,
of course,
Yes. We're in
very much in the
2023 now.
2022 mind in the conversation.
Yeah, indeed. Oh, we've had a lot of other things going on too this year. We've had tons of hackathons and conferences. All of this is just showing the support that we have with our blockchain, and we're going to continue that into 2023. But what we had in 2022 was the Gitcoin GR13. We attended the Web3 World Championship, the L2 Rollathon. We had Blockjam 2022 conference, Game Jam Hackathon, and the Blockchain X Gaming Conference. So a lot of excitement. We continue this on in 2023 as well. We, in addition, had a lot of community growth, and these are really impressive numbers as well. Again, considering some of the downturn that we've had. In 2022, we rose in our Twitter following by 111% growth, up to 115,000 followers there. On Discord, we have 12,000. It's an 84% growth rate. On Reddit, we got to 18,000, which is a 71% growth increase. And then LinkedIn, a 5,000 followers with 48% growth as well. So those are all impressive numbers, and we had a lot of community events in cities all over the world. Matt, I think you can talk more about the community events that we've had going on.
Yeah, so I think we've made it a point to hold side events around major conferences that we attend. So we had events in New York, Singapore, Paris, Dubai, Austin, Denver, Barcelona, Amsterdam, Seoul, Busan, Bengaluru, San Francisco, Miami, Lisbon, Cologne, and Cancun. And I see someone mentioned that we haven't had anything in Brazil or Vietnam, which apparently we have a number of CKB fans out there. So if anyone is located in those areas and would like to get more involved in the project, we would love to talk to you about how we can collaborate on doing some events and build a community where you are.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. This next section here is a list of projects that we've done in 2022 that are related to standards, tools, and frameworks. And some of these I'm personally really excited about as we reach out to new developers and want to bring those into our ecosystem, developing some of these tools. One of them I just mentioned is called Kauai, which is a framework to accelerate dApp development. I'll have Jordan talk a little bit more on this one here in a second, but this is going to help speed up a lot of our development processes and make sure that developers have a smooth transition into our ecosystem and can build dApps more quickly. There's a lot of other tools and frameworks that we have. Open transactions research is one of those. Jordan, can you talk about open transactions and what those are?
Yeah, so open transaction, this is one of the things that I'm most excited about with our chain in general. And this is because so the UTXOs, we know that they have great performance and parallel processing That's one of the reasons that they're selected. But there are also difficulties too, which we've seen, especially in the Cardano ecosystem in their early days of smart contracts. There was a lot of criticism about how that it has something called the shared state problem, which it's basically the dilemma between, let's say, single core and multi-core development. That's the way I like to state it, very very simply, as in developers are really great with single core, but once you get into multi-core, that becomes a lot more difficult for a developer. But it's very clear that that's the way to go. I think we've seen with all desktop processors are multi-core, even mobile phone processors are multi-core. This is the direction we have to go. And similarly, the UTXO model is inherently very similar to that. But there are challenges. And one of those is around how do you actually parallel process things effectively when they actually need to share a similar state. And I'll give a very quick example of that is something like a DEX, where let's say like Yokai Swap or Uniswap, where there's a single pool and it has a single price. Now that price that everybody has to buy at or sell at needs to be recognized by everybody. Now, when you're dealing with something like UTXOs, not everybody will see the exact same viewpoint at the same time unless they are synchronizing constantly. And that synchronization can only occur on a block, so once every couple seconds. And that blocked, every time you wait for a block, that means, excuse me, every time you make a trade, that changes the price, which means it has to occur on a block. And this slows things down. You cannot have one trade every block. You have to have many, many trades per block. And so open transactions is our solution to be able to solve these types of problems. It's something that is available only on Nervos, and it's made possible by our extremely flexible model. This is something we've been looking at for quite some time now. We've actually been evaluating different solutions since the beginning, since I got here in 2020. And open transactions is the variation that is winning winning the debate, and it shows a lot of potential. They showed renewed research on this beginning in 2022, and now they're expecting an MVP in 2023. So this is an important one, even though this is a component out there that, yeah, I know this is not really the most user-friendly topic. All I can really say, this is a big deal here, and we're really looking forward to it.
Yeah. Thank you. And then we had the Taproot demo. Matt, what was the Taproot demo?
Yeah, I think a lot of people probably would not be familiar with the word Taproot, but it is what the Bitcoin core developers have chosen as the smart contract solution for Bitcoin. And it uses some tricks in cryptography to squeeze a lot of functionality out of Bitcoin. And because CKB is heavily inspired by Bitcoin, we're able to utilize the same solution to do smart contracts on CKB. Now, I think it remains to be seen if people would use this solution compared to any other solutions that are available on CKB. But the core devs wanted to display the power of CKB to implement this solution, and also pay some homage to the greatness of Bitcoin to show that we can do this too. And there's some articles out there on the Cryptape blog. You might be able to find them from the Nervos Twitter, but if you're interested, I'd suggest following the Cryptape blog. That's the organization of the Nervos core developers, and yeah, plenty of information out there. It's quite technical solution, but in a lot of ways displays the power of the ideas of CKB.
Right. And one thing I want to quickly add in there is that, so Bitcoin, when they did their Taproot thing, which was one of their biggest upgrades recently, that was, I believe, a hard fork. Soft fork? Okay. Yeah. So that was a fork. That was a fork while our demonstration here of this, which implemented it completely, did not require any fork at all. It was done purely in our smart contract platform. And it's made possible, of course, because of the flexibility that's enabled there. We want developers to be able to experiment and use new technology and not have to wait for the main chain to fork, if it even forks based on something like this. So anyway, that's why this is an important one.
Yeah, I'll add one more thing on that too, is that if you think about, say, Ethereum trying to make use of research in the Bitcoin community, it doesn't really transition over. But because Nervos is so flexible and agnostic, something like all the research that underlies the Lightning Network now, where there's hundreds of people trying to make sense of quite complicated problems to reach an end state. CKB can pull all of that research in, and I think it's really an underappreciated power of the generalization of CKB, that all this research that's going on in blockchain communities is all applicable here.
Thanks, guys. Then next on the list here is XUDT, which I believe stands for Extensible User-Defined Tokens. I think that's sort of the evolution of our SUDT. Jordan, that's had some renewal in 2022, right?
Yes. So let me quickly go back and say what SUDT is. So SUDT was our first standard on Nervos, and it was used for fungible tokens. And because it was the first standard out there, it was very simplistic and very simple on purpose. They wanted it to be very easy to understand. It served as two purposes. It was the first token standard, and it was also the first one of the first projects that we gave out to new developers as here's how you write a smart contract. This is one of the most simple ones out there that you can learn from, and it has very basic functionality to it. But over the years here, SUDT has kind of shown its age and shown some of its limitations. And we continue to hit those even today. Froy, who's the developer on iCKB, recently pointed out a couple things to me and the rest of the team actually about how this standard has basically not aged too well in certain regards. And so anyway, XUDT is going to be one of the replacements for that. It has a lot of new features into it that come around the old shortcomings, and also enables things like sparse Merkle trees, which is it's an upcoming thing that every chain's going to have to worry about it, whether they realize it or not. And I think right now most of them don't realize it, which is the state explosion problem, where you have too much data on chain. This reduces the amount of data on chain dramatically, where you can have one single cell that can basically represent as many tokens as you need and any quantity of them. And it doesn't take any more space for it's a consistent amount of space that's always used. So anyway, those types of innovations are something that we are thinking about because we have state rent, but not all chains out there have state rent, so they're not even thinking about this stuff yet. But they should. Eventually, they'll catch up, hopefully. Anyway, so that's the renewed research in 2022. It is now available on the testnet, and there is no date set for the mainnet release, but that is something definitely that's in progress, and we're looking forward to.
Great, and then we have next on the list here is OmniLock. I'm curious to learn myself a little about OmniLock. Jordan.
Okay, so OmniLock is the successor to PW Lock. So backing up a little bit, we have to look at recognize Lay2, which is one of the development teams that has built a bunch of stuff on Nervos. They are also the creators of the portal wallet ckb.pw. They came out with this innovation on our platform, which was the early versions of account abstraction. This is what allowed the Ethereum wallets to interact with on-chain components, on-chain addresses on Nervos. And they also did the research I think they did several other chains as well, which they were able to do through PW Lock. So OmniLock is the successor to that, which is including all of the functionality of PW Lock for this account abstraction and a whole bunch of new features, which I can't even list. There were too many of them. It's a central point that a lot of developers can use in terms of like one tool to do a whole bunch of things that are pretty related to security and actually locking mechanisms. Has really great integration with smart contract functionality. So anyway, this component is an official supported one, whereas it started out as PW Lock, which was a community component, but it worked so great. We kind of recognized it and realized that this is one that deserves a lot more support and in our ecosystem, and which is really guaranteed for the long term. So this was released to mainnet in 2022, and it is an ongoing, actively supported project.
Thanks, Jordan. Next on the list here, we have Nexus Wallet. Matt, you want to speak to that?
Nexus Wallet will be a browser extension wallet, so you can think about similar to MetaMask, but it will be built with CKB and other UTXO chains in mind. It will, from what I understand, come with a light client. So, as we covered before, you won't have to trust any sort of intermediary or third party. No one can lock you out. You'll just connect directly to the chain. And it's still in early days. Development began in 2022, and we'll stay tuned for where that goes this year. But it will have better support for the different kinds of standards that we're seeing, and I think provide a better user experience.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. And then the next two are related to DApp development, which is again, as I mentioned earlier, is going to accelerate our onboarding and user experience with dApps in our ecosystem. The first one is Luau Scripting. These are both cool names. I like these names, by the way. Luau and Kuai. So Luau Scripting, Matt, can you tell us what that is?
Yeah, so this will be the third programming language that the core team provides support for. The first was C and then Rust. Lua is a little different because it's I can't think of the right word, maybe higher level, where Rust and C are really interacting with the guts of the computer, where Lua, you have a virtual machine running underneath that programming environment. So it may be easier for some people to approach. It's been used heavily in game development. There was a project from the core devs a couple of years ago called Cabletop, where they were building a game engine inside Lua where you could play turn-based games like cards or chess, something like that. I think for programmers out there who maybe if they're Rust is too intimidating and maybe they like JavaScript, something like that better, Lua may open some doors for them.
Then we have Kuai, Jordan. That's the one I'm excited about. Tell me more about Kuai.
Yeah, so Kuai it's a framework to accelerate app development on the L1, and they've isolated a lot of use cases that they see and a lot of patterns that they've seen emerge over time. And so what the goal of this is really to accelerate the development from months and get it down to weeks. So this is an important one because L1 development is pretty tough. We've seen that with a lot of different projects out there, but most of the projects out there are really trying to do pretty simple things. So this is going to enable them to have a shorter path to be able to release things that are doing everything you would expect a dApp to do. So the development on this began in 2022, and there is no target date in mind exactly, but they're making very excellent progress.
Great, thank you. And then we have last on this list is Joy ID, which is a really cool product that has come out. Matt, do you want to talk about Joy ID?
Yeah, so Joy ID is a wallet for CKB that holds your keys inside a secure chip on your phone. So there's no need to generate those 12-word phrases or store them someplace safe. You can store the keys in your phone, and then you can do social recovery as well if you lose your phone. And that means you can authorize transactions with something like Touch ID or Face ID. And I think the first product is Token City, I think, with Joy ID. I think it'll be an NFT project. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. And I see Joy ID was released on mainnet in 2022, which is great news.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, moving on here. Next topic is our new mining ASICs that have been released. And the hash rates here on these Bitmain Antminer K7 is at 63.5 TH per second. And then we have Gold Shell CK Box 2 at 2.1. I believe that's terahash per second. I was just trying to remember what that H was. And so I guess, Jordan, why is that important that we still have continued production on these miners coming out?
Right. Well, let's back up for 1 second. Let's quickly talk about these new miners because they are brand new to our ecosystem, and a lot of people have probably upgraded to them at this point. The Antminer K7, that is a beast. That is an absolute beast, 63.5 terahashes per second. And then Gold Shell is our home miners. I should mention, like the Ant miner from Bitmain, that is a professional miner. It is noisy as all hell. It sounds like a lawnmower. The Goldshell CK Box 2 at 2.1 terahash per second. That's a whisper quiet one that home users can use. So they're approaching different markets there, and it's nice to see that they are still going after these two different markets, whereas in a lot of other ecosystems, they only have the professional miners available, which is only professional miners can really run, because they're so noisy. You cannot have these things in your house. Believe me, I've tried. You cannot do it. It's important because it shows continued corporate investment, excuse me, in the future of the Nervos ecosystem. Developing these things is not an inexpensive task. It requires brand new chips, new hardware to be designed, and of course, production of these machines with no guarantee of revenue when they try to sell these things. So whenever any type of a corporation actually makes an investment like this, they're investing in Nervos indirectly by saying, we believe in the future of it. We believe that we're going to get sales. So we're really glad to see that that these companies are out there and they're continuing to support us. And I think part of the thing in 2022 is there was a little bit of an internal pledge that we are actually going to be a little bit more involved in the mining communities as well. And we did that by attending, I forget the name of the conference. Maybe you remember it. Jane went and spoke at was it the World Mining Conference?
Yeah, World Digital Mining Summit. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're taking a little bit more participation in those types of things as well, because the miners are important to our ecosystem.
Yeah, I think the contrast I've seen in mining communities versus other blockchain communities is, we have something exciting when we walk into a mining community. They're used to, okay, there's Bitcoin, there's Dogecoin, now there's Cadena. I guess there's Flux out there too now. But for the ASIC miners, it really is Cadena. There's us, and I guess Handshake is out there. But we are part of this new class where before all they had was Bitcoin, Litecoin. Now, if you contrast that with, say, going to Consensus or any blockchain-heavy conference where there's 1,000 other smart contract platforms, we don't stand out so much. So yeah, I think we've really seen that is a sector of our community that we really can show some more love to.
Thank you, Matt and Jordan, both. Now, the next one here is we've had a few research papers published in 2022, and I'll just say, I started with Nervos a few months ago, and one of the things that excited me was this absolute attention to sort of perfecting the science of blockchain and UTXOs and trying to work on some of these problems. And reading some of the white papers, I was extremely impressed. We have a few of them that we'll mention. I'll start here just with the first one, and you guys chime in here. NC Max, that was a paper that was written. Jordan or Matt, do you want to take what that paper was about and why that was important?
Yeah, so I'll take this one. This is the easy one out of the three. NC Max is it's part of our consensus mechanism, which was rolled out in 2019. And so the reason that this is important isn't necessarily that there's anything new coming out. It is already part of our chain, but it's actually been published now in this research has been published within the I hope this is the right word, the scientific community, and this means that they have actually reviewed and recognize this as being a significant contribution. So it's important because it is that recognition that we were looking for quite some time. We already knew that it worked and it's been out there, but this is really just from the academic community recognition from that.
Yeah, thank you, Jordan. Then we have this next one here, which is polynomial IOPs for linear algebra relations. I can barely say all of that all at once.
Yeah, I'm glad
Matt,
you read it. So, yeah, this has to do with, I guess, creative use of math inside zero knowledge proofs. So I didn't read the paper. Things like this go over my head. But for people who are interested in ZK snarks and getting more functionality out of using those kind of zero knowledge systems, innovations like this are important, where people are taking math and playing with it in ways that achieve optimizations inside those kind of systems.
Yeah, thank you. And then this last one here, analyzing and improving shard allocation protocols for sharded blockchains.
Yeah, so this was an inventory of 7 different approaches to sharding, and the trade-offs there, and establishing some rules around what is theoretically possible and what's not, in terms of laying those things out. I think it's a great outline of different approaches to sharding, which hasn't been so hot as of late. I think Ethereum kind of moved away from that idea a couple of years ago, and after that, sharding has really fallen out of favor. But who knows? Who knows what the future brings as people continue to think of ways to scale blockchains.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Next item here is we had a lot of progress here on the UTXO Alliance. This is an organization that is obviously UTXO based, and we're a part of that. Cardano is a part of that. Some other larger names have bonded together and sort of developing technology and getting together. Jordan, do you want to talk about what we've done here in 2022 regarding the UTXO Alliance and where we see this heading?
Yeah. So anybody who's been following Nervos for a while knows that the UTXO Alliance came out several years ago. It was announced several years ago, and we had some initial discussions, but it really didn't take off too much. It needed some more leadership and some more renewed interest and some more participants in there. So that came in 2022, and we give thanks to Cardano for actually supplying some of the manpower to make that happen. We've been having a bunch of town hall meetings. The first official one did happen in 2022, and they've been monthly since. And we've also actually broken into multiple working groups now, and we probably see more of those will be forming in the future. And so we're starting to see the early discussions, technical discussions are happening about how we can collaborate together, as well as some of the marketing efforts and ecosystem development things are now actually starting to be collaborated on. And you'll actually see the first one of that in 2023 is I'll be joining the Alephium, I hope I am pronouncing that properly, Twitter space later this month, actually.
Yeah, that's going to be exciting. Awesome. Looking forward to that, actually. This last bullet here, announcing a new focus on decentralized governance and community by way of DAOs. This is one that's really, I think, important and a direction that we're really focusing on here in 2023. Matt, you want to talk about this one?
Yeah, I think as far as CKB development goes, we are 5 years in, and we are over 3 years into the network being live. So the idea of a decentralized network, this really is go time in terms of that being a focus. And I think, as we left 22 and definitely into this year, it's a very important part of how people spend their days in terms of thinking about how we push this into being sustainable and decentralized. And with the CKB Community Fund DAO, which was announced yesterday, I believe, that really is the first step. I think one of the big criticisms I heard about the Nervos DAO is that you can't do any DAO related stuff with it. You can't do any sort of governance. And that was always the vision to get there. And this really is the first step. So the CKB Community Fund DAO is a initial pool of 276 million CKB. And that's contributed by .bit, Cryptape, Nervina Labs, Unipass, Magic Base, Cluster 3, and the Nervos Foundation. And the way that these CKB will be allocated will be proposals on a forum, and people actually use their CKB that's locked in the Nervos DAO to vote on those proposals. So you can find, if you check the Twitter today, you can check out the rules, and there's a process there for connecting your Nervos DAO deposit to an address in your browser that you can use MetaMask to vote with. And I think as we go through this year, I think we'll see more of this, and I think it's very exciting.
Yeah, and I'll add a little bit to that. We announced this effort in 2022, and it was a little bit quiet there for a while, but this is the first of, I would say, many efforts that's coming out. So this is of course, we're not going to just throw everything out there and just hope that it flies. It's going to take some time. There's going to be changes along the way, but this is it. This is your first chance to really vote directly on the way the funds are allocated. And so we're really excited for this, just as members of the foundation, but also as members of the community ourselves. This is an effort that this is the future. This is the future of Nervos.
right, I guess it's time for
Okay.
Q&A, right?
Yeah, I think we can take some Q&A. We have a few minutes here, and I know we had at least a couple
Yeah,
questions.
I
run
jotted
through.
them down. So the first one, Jordan, Travis, can you cover where things are with documentation tutorials? Are there any plans that you have around creating new documentation and tutorials in the year to come?
Yeah, I can add something to that, which is definitely that is going to be a big priority here. This is an area that we believe we've been lacking in, and part of that is the our tooling. Some of our tooling is in like its third version now, and so they iterated very quickly. And this is one of the challenges that is very difficult in any ecosystem to get around is especially when you're dealing with something experimental. Sometimes you have to iterate quickly just because you are actively finding new challenges, actively finding new problems, and this means that the tool that you're using has to change with it. Rather than really kind of just sticking to your ground and building something that's stable. With a lot of our stuff, we took the path where it became largely unstable because it was iterating quickly. Now, so this, of course, this means quicker innovation, all positive changes, but it means that for developers that were trying to build, it was quite difficult for them because things kept changing. And also, because things were changing so quickly, documentation was out of date on a regular basis, making it very much more difficult. So anyway, these are things that are being addressed now here in 2023. Not only do we have new tools being developed, but there's a renewed focus on making sure that the documentation is up to date. There's a new team that's been hired within Cryptape, new members that are focusing exclusively on this. So we want to make sure that this is the best experience possible. And while I don't expect this to be ever necessarily, let's say, as simple and easy as developing in Solidity, because that's had a lot more time to mature, we expect that this will be a completely night and day difference from where it was previously, let's say in 20 and 2021.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'd just say I'd have to add just on that quickly is that, yeah, as I've started to go through the process of learning, I'm an experienced developer in a different industry coming into this, learning some of the way that we do things specifically at Nervos. It's going to help with new developers too coming in, because some of the same things that are challenging for me is going to be the same things challenging for others. So we're hoping that, and plus the collaboration that Jordan was just talking about, helps out going forward. I'm pretty passionate about making it easier for developers to learn. So that's one thing I'm wanting and currently focusing on myself actually now.
There's a question here about using Chat GPT to write Rust code. Jordan, Travis, have you ever thought about doing that?
No, no, I've never thought about doing that because that is a remarkable move forward in AI. I would say for general conversation, but it has its limitations. I would say like there's the possibility exists in the future for definitely for code to be written by some kind of AI, but at this point in time, it's still not really even that close yet. When you look at the solutions that are out there currently, there's I think what is it, GitHub's Copilot, and there's another one, and there's another one that I use, and I can't remember the name, but I use it with VS Code. It was actually out before Copilot. Anyway, these things, what they do is they do help. They help by recognizing certain patterns, especially when you have like say 5 lines of code that are all very similar with one minor little change in them. Sometimes they can help you. They can actually figure out, wait a minute, these lines look all the same except for this minor change. And here's the result of that we're guessing it is. Would you like to use this solution? And this helps time. It helps time for the developer. So those types of things are great, but they don't actually write the code for you. And I don't think that even Chat GPT is at a level where it's going to just yet, right? Maybe a few more years, it'll be a different story. But today, as it is, we're still working with pretty rudimentary tools where we're still writing, I would say, like 98% of the code.
Any plans for a deeper collaboration with other EUTXO chains like Cardano or Ergo?
I mean, yes, absolutely. I mean, that's the reason for the UTXO Alliance. Ergo is another participant in there, early participant. I mean, it's still early days. It's still discussion of what exactly our focuses would be. But when you look at other ecosystems, the main form of collaboration is usually on something related to bridges. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's always a discussion. That's always been a topic, especially in our community. I know people have been waiting for ages for the Cardano Bridge. Still open a discussion of how we're going to accomplish that. But all of these ecosystem things, we are looking for ways to collaborate, and that's the purpose. That is the reason why the UTXO Alliance exists.
Yeah, I think one of the really interesting things with UTXOs is the ability to do atomic swaps, and I think that's been a topic of the UTXO Alliance. That's the first step when we talk about that interoperability is what if we could do swaps between different chains. And unfortunately, because of the cryptographic flexibility of Nervos, it doesn't seem like there's any sort of limitations there in terms of doing a swap between any particular chain and Nervos. Doing swaps between other different kinds of chains, between them may be more complicated, but yeah, I see that as, we'll definitely see progress on that.
Yeah, that was one interesting one. I'll throw in one last comment on that, which was during the discussions in the UTXO Alliance. One of the first things that we did when we started to collaborate was we put together a spreadsheet for everybody to edit and put in some of the details of their chains. One of the most important details is what encryptions do you use on your chain. Nervos was the only one on the spreadsheet that said we could support any level of encryption. So, I mean, that's an important one just because we have the ability to connect to everybody. We can actually be a strong participant in whatever is built within the UTXO Alliance.
Yep. Would you recommend using XUDT moving forward, or is SUDT still fine? Will it have limitations if not planned properly?
Well, number one, it's still in testnet. It's still in testnet, so I wouldn't recommend it today. But probably in the near future, once it is mainnet, that's probably going to be the way to go. Either that or something with Coda, depending on how your project goes. I think those are really the future. SUDT is probably here to some extent for the long term, I would say. I believe that XUDT it rolls a lot of the basic functionality into it. So if you wanted to use it in a very simplified state, you probably still can. But I think that it'll be recognized pretty quickly that if you are a dApp developer and you want to write smart contracts that use tokens in new ways that beyond the basics, XUDT is probably going to be the standard you're going to be working with.
Great. So last question here. I see, if I was starting a POW project, could I merge mine with Nervos? So I'll take this one. I think the Bitcoin merge mining is seeing kind of a renaissance at this point. I know we've had some conversations with Syscoin. Komodo is in the UTXO Alliance. I do think there's also Babylon in the Cosmos ecosystem where they want to use Bitcoin merge mining to provide like finality to, is finality not be the word, but some sort of like clock to a proof of stake chain so you can't do a long range attack. I think, with that security from CKB with proof of work, there's always the possibility that could be used for merge mining. And I think merge mining is a whole body of work in and of itself to make sense of what the trade-offs are there. But I guess the short answer to this would be yes. So we have the block header extension field now, which is not consensus critical data. Anything you put in that field is ignored by the consensus nodes. So we're going to have a soft fork that you need to have the light client data in there. But if you put additional metadata in there for merge mining a chain, it would be accepted by all the nodes of the network. You just really would need support from the major mining pools at this point to make that work. But I think similar to that idea of like people looking at Bitcoin security and saying, how can we use this for something? We'll see the same thing with CKB over the long term.
Okay, so let's see. Is that it for questions? That's the last
Yeah,
one, right?
I think that's all we got.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. And we are just 1 minute over now, so we made it. And we have, I think, enough time for any final thoughts you guys might have. Travis or Matt, either one of you have any thoughts?
I'll just say I'm really excited for this next year. I think that despite all of the bad things that have happened in 2022, there's a lot of good to come, and I think Nervos is very well positioned and really excited to see what we can build this year.
Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, I think this has been a long project full of ups and downs, and I think seeing how people have responded to the carnage of the last 12 months, it's very encouraging. I think we've got a community of people that really believe in what this chain is and what it can do, and it really isn't impacted that much by everything that goes on around it. And yeah, it's incredibly encouraging and helps with moving through what's quite difficult technical problem to make all this stuff work.
Yeah. So let me see. I can add something here, which is I think it's important to take some time and look back. And for me, that means looking back all the way to when I joined in 2020, when our ecosystem was entirely different in my mind. Our technology it had amazing potential, but a lot of it just simply wasn't finished and wasn't ready. And our community was minuscule, comprised of just a handful of people who most of which are not even here anymore. We've seen huge levels of growth since I've been here. I'm approaching my third year now. Absolutely huge levels of growth in the community, going from something that was almost non-existent into one of the strongest communities I've seen around. And also the same with our technology too, seeing it as basically a seed which hadn't actually grown, and now we're actually starting to see it actually sprout and really start to take off. It's exciting times here. I'm really looking forward to what we have in 2023, now that we're really starting to see these components not just being something on paper, but something that you can actually use, that developers can actually start to build on. So anyway, that's what I got for today. I'm really excited about 2023 and where we'll go for the future. And even though it's a bear market right now and things are kind of looking down in some ways, bear markets don't last forever. And I think we're really going to come out. This is a good time for us to double down, continue building, and we're just going to come screaming out of the gate during the next bull run. So anything else from you guys? Are we good to wrap up here?
Yep. Thanks everybody for tuning in. And,
all right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
See
thanks
you on
to you
Twitter
guys.
and Telegram.
Yeah, Twitter and Telegram. Oh yeah, we got to do that. Where can, just for the 5 people out there that don't already follow you, Matt, where should they follow you?
Matt_Bitcoin on Twitter.
Okay, and Travis, how about you?
It would be Nervos Ninja on Twitter.
Okay, all right, great. Thanks everybody for joining. Thanks everybody for listening. All right, we'll see you next time.
Take care, everybody.